Greetings, YouTube. My wife pulled up an Alan Alda podcast recently while we were having lunch, and he was interviewing a guy that had just recently written a book about having conversations with science deniers, people who deny the verifiable reality that they live in because it does not mesh with their personal, philosophical, or political agenda. Their narrative runs counter to science, so they would rather throw out science than change their narrative. And one of the things the gentleman said, and I apologize because I can't remember his name, I'm horrible at names, got me thinking about perfectionism, because that seems to be what some of these folks are doing. They want a perfect scientific answer. They want the definitive end. They want to know that this right here is the answer to this particular problem, and it's never, ever going to change. And that's not how science works. It is, however, how faith works for a lot of people. For a lot of people, they firmly believe in the concept of a perfect faith. Now, it's my opinion, and I am a theist, that a perfect faith is a shallow faith. Because if you're not willing to question your faith, how strong is your faith? Are you afraid to question your faith? Because if you aren't afraid to question your faith, then you can arrive at a deeper meaning in my book. That those who are truly devout to their faith and to their gods or whatever they particularly venerate are going to question it. They're not going to approach it as this perfect thing that is flawless and immutable forever. To me, that is a very shallow way of looking at their faith. And they bring that same frame of mind to science. So when science says, in March of one year that this is what's going on, and in June they say, okay, this is what's going on, and those two facts are different, that means that the science isn't perfect, which means you can't believe it. Wherein the actual way science works is it's a process building upon what you know in the past. And sometimes we're boom, 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 and all of a sudden we go, oh crap, we were really, really wrong. And we end up back over here, and it's boom, 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 boom. Okay, good. We've now gotten past where we were in the past with that false theory, that bad theory, and now we're going to move forward even further. Because, like, for example, we thought at one time that heat moved from a cold object to a warm object with an invisible fluid. That there is no invisible fluid. It is just thermodynamics. And when we realized that is what it is, it's a form of radiation. Literally, it's heat is just thermodynamics. That's all it is. It's cold object, warm object. Heat moves from here. As heat moves that way, bingo. Eventually, you reach equilibrium, and my water will eventually be tepid and not something I want to drink. So I like cold water. But it will be room temperature eventually. That's just the way it works. And believing that this shouldn't do that isn't going to stop it. You can believe all you want that this bottle of ice with ice in it should not ever get warm, but it's going to. And that level of complexity, of dynamism, disturbs some people. That they can't lock something in place and have it be immutable. And COVID has been a great example of that, because month after month after month, what we know about the disease has gotten more and more complex as we've gathered more and more data. Some people, for example, thought that the rapidity that we arrived at a vaccine meant that it wasn't any good. because they're thinking in, well, my religion is 2,000 years old, so that shows how it's very durable, how it's profound and things like. No, that just means it's 2,000 years old. Whether your faith is 2,000 years old or 2,000 seconds old, it doesn't matter. It can be just as genuine and just as real to the person that holds that belief. But because things change, they don't like that. They don't like the fact that we got more information now than we had in the past. They don't like the fact that their narrative, the vaccine was created too fast, because they don't know about the fact that we've been working on mRNA vaccines for 20 years. So yeah, we weren't working on the specific vaccine for COVID for 20 years because COVID-19 wasn't around. It wasn't bothering. It was probably around, but it wasn't bothering humans at that point. Maybe COVID-19 didn't exist at all. Maybe it's a recent mutation. I don't know. Maybe we never will. But it wasn't something we were working on prior to it becoming a problem for humans. If it in fact was present in the bat population in China, that really wasn't having an impact on people's lives. And finding a vaccine for the bats wasn't something that was going to be higher on our priority list. But suddenly when it became a disease that we humans had to deal with, yeah, bingo, now it's an important thing to look at. Hey, we've got this vaccine research we've been working on for 20 years. Maybe we can apply it to this problem right in front of us. And that would give us a big jump start on finding a vaccine. And lo and behold, it worked. And now there are hundreds of millions of people who have taken the vaccine and have had no significant ill effect. I felt crappy the day after I got my second dose for about 5 hours, and then I was done. That was it. 5 hours, and then I was fine. Some people have more symptoms. Okay, that happens. And there are people who are still getting breakthrough cases of COVID. But because they've got the vaccine, they don't get as sick, and their recovery time is better. Funny about how science works. But it doesn't have certitude. It is not immutable. It is not a perfect faith that they can hold up and they can look at and turn around in their hands. You see, look at this. This thing's flawless. And again, I think that's a really shallow way of looking at things, but that's just me. But it's not science. And that uncertainty bothers people. I knew a guy a long time ago, and I was researching relativity at that point in my life. Eventually, I moved on to researching quantum mechanics as well. And he didn't believe in relativity, even though he couldn't, or quantum mechanics for that matter, even though he couldn't have had a computer, and he couldn't have had the fluorescent lights that were humming over our heads if it weren't for our understanding of relativity and quantum mechanics. But because he personally couldn't taste it or touch it, or, you know what I mean, he couldn't feel it and perceive it with his, 5 senses, it didn't work. It didn't exist for him. And again, that's a really shallow interpretation of the world around you. And this is from a guy that wore glasses. Well, that in sense, why are you wearing glasses? If you don't believe in science, why are you wearing glasses? You're saying you believe in glasses because he wore Coke bottle glasses, man. They were thick. And never questioned it. He drove a car, never questioned about the fact that that wouldn't have existed if it weren't for science, our understanding of thermodynamics and, internal combustion engines and things like that. He didn't seem to care about that because it was something that he thought he could understand. But the underlying principles for those things were far more complex than he would probably like to think about. So because he couldn't see it and taste it and feel it, it didn't exist. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if he was an anti-vaxxer and a denier of any number of things. Hell, for all I know, he's a flat earther and doesn't believe that January 6th was an insurrection. It wouldn't shock me if he were conservative. I haven't spoken to the guy in, I don't know, almost 30 years. But Science isn't immutable. It isn't perfect. It isn't flawless. There is no end. And because of that, some folks are very much uncomfortable with it because they want perfection. And sometimes perfectionism can foster ignorance, and that can foster death because ignorance can kill people. If you don't understand how electricity works, you can die. You don't understand how water works, you can die. Very simple things. If you don't understand how they work, you can die. If you don't understand how diseases work, you can die. And your actions can not only kill you, but kill your neighbors. Which is the height of selfishness in my book. And being a danger to everyone around you is a really damn selfish position to be in. Folks want certitude, and they're not going to find it in science. And that bugs them, and it's why they deny it. And I got to be honest with you, I don't have an answer to that.